Some there in Nigeria. Well, Kethevane Gorjestani, international affairs editor, is with me now. Kethevane, I suppose the crucial question really is how much truth is there to this claim that Christians are being persecuted in Nigeria?
Well, look, if you take Nigeria, as you said, it's split pretty much evenly between Christians and Muslims. And basically, you have a majority Muslim north and a majority Christian south in the country. And it is true that the country has faced insecurity for years now, but it is a much more complicated picture than what Donald Trump has been painting. Yes, thousands have been killed in recent years. You have obviously groups like Boko Haram, insurgent groups, jihadist groups that are operating mostly in the north, carrying out attacks. But you also have other smaller jihadist groups and gangs that are also targeting the population. But it is not just about religion. It's also about geography. It's also about ethnic violence. It's also about clashes between farmers and herders over resources, over land. So yes, religious groups are being targeted, but Christians are not the only ones. And actually, experts who know the country well argue that actually Muslims are the biggest targets, are more likely to be attacked than the Christians, because most of the attacks are actually in the north, where you have a majority Muslim population. And a group like Boko Haram, for example, yes, they target Christians, they target churches, but they also target Muslims that they believe are not Muslim enough or good enough Muslims. So yes, you have insecurity. Arguably, yes, the government is not doing enough to protect its population as a whole, but it is not clear that there is a specific persecution of Christians as a group, as a community, simply for the fact that they are Christians.
America first. Why on earth does Donald Trump care about this?
Well, look, there seems to be some similarities to what we saw a few months ago with the focus on what Donald Trump and his supporters saw as a sort of genocide of white South Africans, if you remember that story. This idea that you sort of take individual stories. Again, with the South Africans, it was the same thing. Yes, white South Africans were the victims of violence, but they were not targeted necessarily always because they were white. It was simply a broader security problem in the country. And what you see with Nigeria is these right-wing religious groups in the Trump MAGA world that are pushing these reports about attacks on churches, about attacks on Christians, to focus on that and to fit a sort of political agenda, which is the persecution of Christians, not only in the U.S., but around the world. There is a sort of factual basis to this. There was a bipartisan U.S. Commission on international religious freedom that urged the U.S. government to redesignate Nigeria as a country of particular concern when it comes to religious freedom, which it was designated as between 2020 and 2023. But if you look at the report specifically highlights the persecution of both the Christians and the Muslims, not specifically the Christians. The person who jumped on that report was Senator Ted Cruz, who is one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters and who has a big evangelical Christian base in Texas. A month ago, he introduced a bill called the Nigeria Religious Freedom Accountability Act, calling for sanctions on Nigerian officials for, quote, ignoring and even facilitating the mass murder of Christians by Islamist jihadists. So again, no mention of the fact that Muslims are also being targeted. And this falls into this broader move by Donald Trump's second administration of really focusing on religion, on defending perceived attacks on Christians in the United States and abroad.
And those fears from Donald Trump threatening military action, I mean, if he was to take military action, what form might that take?
Well, first of all, it would be, again, a departure from the sort of America First, President of Peace message that he had during his whole campaign, where he was saying that the U.S.'s role is not to fix all of the world's problems. But since taking office, we've seen that he has departed multiple times from that. There was the U.S. bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities. You now have U.S. troops that are based in Israel to oversee the Gaza peace plan. You have the series of military strikes in the Caribbean and in the Pacific on those alleged cartel drug boats. You have the threat of military action in Venezuela. Now you have Nigeria. All of these really show that Donald Trump, even though he said he was the peace president, is really every time there's a problem, he decides, or at least claims, that he's going to take military action, though he has not committed and remained pretty iffy on whether he would send U.S. troops to Nigeria when he was asked the question. He is unlikely to send U.S. troops because MAGA doesn't want that. There is already criticism on the right, those who are interested in foreign policy, who are saying, this is not what we voted for. We're not here to send our boys and our girls to go and fight somebody else's war. So if you're not sending U.S. troops on the ground, that means you would likely go through military strikes. But as we've seen in the past with the fight against the Islamist insurgency in Africa, whether it's the Americans, the French, or others, it is extremely hard to target these groups. Even harder if you don't have the cooperation of the country where you are acting, which is why you saw the leadership of Nigeria saying, we welcome their help, but we need to do it together, not unilaterally. And finally, it is even more complicated if you don't have also the cooperation of some of the countries that are bordering Nigeria, especially in this case in the north. The border is with Niger. Remember that the U.S. Army pulled out fully from Niger last year in the summer. And so they no longer have that intelligence, that cooperation capacity that they used to have. So this would be extremely hard for Donald Trump to pull off without creating something that even his own supporters don't really want to see happen, which is the United States getting bogged down in a fight that is not its own.